Hey there, I'm Eric Calderon. I'm a 26-year animation veteran. I'm a producer and writer, and currently the Executive Vice President of Falcons Beyond Global. I'm also the creator and host of Surviving Animation, a YouTube channel focused on the business of cartoons. And today I'm here talking with CCAP, and I've been working with them for about a year, so I'm really excited to tell you what it's like being with them. Well, actually, I've been watching cartoons since I was a little kid, so it was pretty easy to fall into animation, but it was kind of an accident. So I graduated with a degree in business marketing and Eastern religion as a minor, and I took a PA job in New York City back in the 90s. So, as fate and coincidence would have it, an executive asked if I could read some scripts for a new project. And I read them, having no formal training in anything film school related, and gave notes like I was a business student. And they liked my approach, they liked my organization. And my first job was as a script reader. Well, it was probably the first animated promotional short that I ever produced. It was back in my days at MTV. And at the time, there was the famous MTV logo that people were doing 10-second animations based on. And I saw this, really cool artist who did kind of like surf demon stuff. And I went to my boss and I said, hey, I think this would be a good design for an MTV logo spot. And he said, yeah, it's great. You have to produce it. And so I just kind of said, well, I better figure out how to make animation. And I just did it from scratch. I learned everything, made a bunch of mistakes, and delivered my first 10-second animated ID promo, I think. And that's when I said, oh, that's producing. Just kind of figuring it out as you go, making a lot of mistakes, asking a lot of questions, learning how to use equipment, and also interfacing with the talent. I really got excited by it. So I started producing right away. Wow, that's a difficult question. I suppose if I look back, there was a moment when I was out the Emmys, which is a very rare thing to go to, and a project I had produced called Afro Samurai was nominated for Best Animated Series. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, in the entire history of all Japanese animation, no title has ever even been nominated before. And then I realized I was a foreign producer who had brought, that level of prestigious Japanese anime to the American market. And when our art director was on stage kind of giving his acceptance speech for Best Individual Art Direction in Japanese, I just felt, a lot of pride at that moment for, accomplishing what I'd hoped to do, which is, at the time, try to bring Japanese animation to a wider audience. So I felt really happy at that moment, and I feel like I accomplished what I had dreamed I could accomplish. And actually, ironically, shortly after, I quit because I realized I had accomplished it. So I had to move on. Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of dreams that I want to keep fulfilling. One very passionate personal dream that I hope to achieve one day is actually to get an Oscar for a short film. That's one of the goals I have in mind before I, peace out in the animation career. So I think having a short film that has emotional value, that is relevant, that makes people think a little bit, that would be one of my goals. Another goal I have is actually to try to introduce more dramatic animation that has some of the genres that I like romance and family, and just things that really tell a uniquely human story despite being in the animated medium. Well, I think as a Filipino American, I was really excited about the idea of trying to mentor and help talent from the Philippines to help tell our stories and to help help the industry there and over here find new talent, find new voices, and bring more diversity to the animation marketplace in general. So when I first met Marla, actually at a convention in Ottawa, she told me about CCAP. She told me about the visions and goals, and I really, really synced up with those goals. And I hope I can use, the 26 years of experience that I've had to try to give to the next generation some of the tools that I've used. And selfishly, I hope to learn from them, because, the more you talk and interact with younger, less experienced people in the industry, the more chance you have for constant freshness and constant innovation, being brought to the world.
What's your favorite Filipino food?
Well, I guess my favorite Filipino food is so basic in a way. It's lumpia, because it's so easy, and because when I go to family reunions, there's always a big kind of like bucket of it. And I feel like I wake up 3 days later after a lumpia coma, and I'm like, well, how many did I eat? And so that is definitely my weakness. I do want to say to all Filipinos, you need to make more vegetables. Like, seriously, we need to learn to actually cook better, fresher vegetables. Well, I think if I look back on my career, and especially if I think about entertainment in general, it's a very unstable industry. We're not becoming doctors or accountants or engineers. And I think if I could give myself one lesson, it would be to just learn how to handle money, learn how to work within personal cash flows, with production cash flows, and to know that when you're in a feast year, it's a time to save. And then when you're in a famine year, understanding how to manage your own budget and expectations, to ride out the difficult times, to try to survive in the end. So, making animation is a passion, making cartoons is fun. I think in my early years, if I had focused more on the not fun things and had those as, the backbone of my skill set, I think I might have got to where I wanted faster and better, and maybe even had more success. Well, I think my vision for CCAP as kind of a senior advisor is to really promote the discipline of creating new intellectual properties. I think a lot of times we think of development as, pulling ideas out of a hat, or following some trend and doing another one of those, or just, going to your old sketchbook or your old diary and just, putting those things out. And I think it's a much more disciplined business art form. And I hope to give the skills actually to more Filipinos to do development. And development and animation is kind of a not often talked about enough discipline, and it's a combination of network marketing, creativity, understanding forms and format, education, and business savvy, all rolled up together. So if I could pass some of those skills on to an organization like CCAP, and then they could pass it on to more Filipinos, we just have a better chance of building longer term equity in the kind of things that we create, and having ownership of brands and having ownership of intellectual properties. And even though we can continue to do the hand-to-mouth production businesses and be in the pipeline of producing animation, it's not until you reach an ownership position that you can really affect the wealth of people over generations even. Oh, that's a tough question. A personal hero. Well, I have a few personal heroes, I suppose. I mean, one person I really look up to is actually Hayao Miyazaki, but for a very specific reason. I think he has a point of view on the world that he's very consistent about. So if you look at his films, you look at his properties, he's always pushing out these same kind of thematic ideas. And I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I do admire his consistency. I admire that he always loves characters that work hard. I love that he always shows a delicate balance between society and nature. I like how he always shows two sides of nature, one which really doesn't care about you and could kill you at a second or bring you back to life, and another smaller, more helpful one that is really a friend to humanity. And I really like that he has kind of young female messianic characters with supporting societally trapped male supporting characters. It's a very specific set of tropes. And I think that to reach that level of storytelling sophistication, I think I really, really admire that. Really admire that. The other person I really admire, to be honest, is a peer of mine, and I've known him since the early 90s, is actually Chris Pronowski. He's the owner of Studio Titmouse. So Chris is a real amazing multi-hyphenate in that he's a great director, he's a great producer, he understands the law, he understands business development, and he's just always a great person to hang out with. Like, he's just so full of life and vitality and happiness and creativity that he just gathers around an environment and created a company that is got a really unique profile. And I feel like he's a once in a generation kind of talent, and I'm just very proud to know him. If there's one thing that I could say to all Filipino creators who are currently working in animation, I would say that remember, your Filipino culture is your strength. So try to bring that forward, show people what our beautiful culture is about, and tell them the stories that matter to you and to your surroundings and the people you care about. But as you do that, remember, the discipline of storytelling, the discipline of the format of television and film is essential to study and learn. But once you master those tropes, master those basics, you can then put your individual cultural signature on top of that.